right, we are in the club today, joined by Jason Heiss in the second chair. Welcome, Jason. And we have our guest, Ian Scherber, VP of Business Development at Jaanuu.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Welcome. Thanks for coming in, Ian. You know, for yourself, Ian, I think it's always interesting to hear how someone gets into the industry that they're in. I know Jason and myself, we never thought we'd be in this industry on our side of the table, but you find yourself into different pockets of industry. So how did you find your way to Jaanuu, and how did you get into this scrub industry?
Yeah, like many things, it's a long, fun story, so I'll do my best to keep it concise. I've always been labeled at an early age. I've always been labeled crazy, right? ADHD, however you want to say it. As you develop and you grow up, everyone starts to call you an entrepreneur.
Sure.
Had no idea what it was. I grew up in a small town in northern Minnesota. And hard work's always kind of been at the backbone of, I would say, our culture in northern Minnesota in a lot of ways.
Sure.
Rich mining history, Duluth. And I was the kid that would steal apples from the neighbor's tree and then like sell them back to him, like go do some door knocking. And I think that, that concept of hustling has always kind of been instilled in me at an early age and trying to find something to do. And I was a terrible student, going through high school and played sports, had just really relied on, at that time, more, probably salesmanship to get through school, right?
Sure.
Even to the point where I was at one point employing a couple of my friends to do some homework for me. But yeah, entrepreneurship kind of has always wrapped me into my direction in life. And I was lucky enough to find a couple creative outlets early on to kind of, kickstart what it is that got me into this industry. And
right.
A lot of it was predicated off of like school spirit. So, going to my high school at the time, there was just not a ton of spirit wear. There wasn't a great spot to buy it. There was no retail store. And I think, I was in eighth or ninth grade at the time. And there was walking through the high school, and there was a couple people wearing like our biggest competitors' stuff, and I'm like, what's wrong with people? Why would you ever wear that? Right.
Right.
And then it kind of dawned on me, there was this issue of us not having apparel at the school and no really great way to buy it. Just so happened that I was looking for a job, and the librarian at the high school, his family, rich history in the community. They've owned a hardware store for 50 years, 60 years. And I went and asked him, I said, hey, I'm looking for a job this summer. Yeah. And he's like, yeah, go talk to my brother. I think I hopped on my bike that afternoon. I went down there and I started talking to Lee Harnell, and Lee said, I'm not hiring right now in the lumberyard. Sorry, you're, 13 years old. You weigh 142 pounds. If that, you can't really do much work. But he was unloading, he used the term silk screening equipment, but he was unloading screen printing equipment. And I asked him about it because I was nervous. And he's like, yeah, it's custom t-shirt equipment. I'm getting into the business. I make the football team. I'm walking off the field. The coach says something about rivalry t-shirts. And I was like, oh, I can make t-shirts. And I just made the team. I'm, a freshman. And he looks at me and like everyone's cleats stop. We're walking off the field and everyone's cleats stop. Like, what did he just say to the coach? Right.
Yeah.
And he's like, okay, get me a quote. I'm like, yep, you got it. And I go home and I like take out an iPad from, 2007. What is a quote? Like type it out, and like, you land on, Custom Ink, and I'm screenshotting and like using their system. And, the Custom Ink's model is price up front, and then they hit you with the fees when you get to the end of the cart. I printed out the price up front. It was like $3.95, 500 shirts, 4-color front. I take him down to him and he's like, great deal. Sounds good. Here's a check. And I'm like, cool. So I go talk to Lee and I'm like, I got a big order. And, he's thinking of business today, right?
Right.
You have this 13-year-old kid that comes in with a t-shirt order, it's hilarious. And he smiled, he was very kind, and he's like, sounds good. Let's start printing t-shirts. So that really kickstarted the evolution of entrepreneurship for me.
Sure.
Fell in love with design. I fell in love with apparel, customer service, and it was really problem solving in sales,
And we talk about this a lot. Sales gets such a bad rap, but at the end of the day, you're problem solving. That is what you were doing.
Yeah. High level problem solvers, right?
Yeah.
So that kickstarted this whole next 3-4 years of my life. Like, this is amazing. I fell in love with it, and I was dealing with bringing spirit wear to Proctor High School in a lot of really fun ways. And it really helped kind of develop the foundation for me to build confidence because I was a terrible student and I had like, you're spoon fed these things that you have to do. And I focused all my time outside of that building this business. And I ended up going to St. John's to get recruited for football, small Catholic school in the middle of Minnesota. And they had this thing called entrepreneurship program, which was just timely because
Yeah.
the recruiter at the time was like, "You're an entrepreneur. This is great." I'm like, "What is that word?"
Yeah.
So I land there freshman year, and I'm pretty ignorant when it comes to finances. Family background doesn't, not a lot of help from the
Sure.
from the parents whatsoever. So I land there, and this like, I get an email. It says your tuition's due, and it's like $50,000. And I turn to my roommate, and I'm like, "Sam, it says I owe like 50 grand for school."
Yeah.
He's like, "Yeah, that's how it works." I'm like, "What do you mean? They don't just bill you at the end? Like, that's not how this works?" He's like, "No, dude, like you got to pay for school." And I was like, "Oh," I just like sat back in my chair,
Yeah.
knock on the door.
Yeah.
And it's a senior in the dorm rooms selling t-shirts to get into parties. You got to wear this t-shirt. It's got a map on it. As you go to each, spot, you cross off,
Little bar crawl. Yeah.
bar crawl, but for college houses, right?
Yeah.
And you're going like, okay, I just turned 18 and I'm looking at them. I'm like, I'm going to buy this t-shirt, right? That's going to tell anybody that I've been drinking because I have X's on it. I shut the door on him and he wanted like $30 for the t-shirt or something. And I kind of laughed to my roommate Sam. I'm like, "We got this. Like I'm going to pay for school. Here we go,
Yeah.
So I launched a t-shirt. It was a pocket tee. Show me your map, something kind of fun.
Yeah.
And then on the inside of the shirt, we printed the map. So
Okay.
I think after selling, $6,000 worth of t-shirts, Venmo kicked me off right away. And then I got called to the dean's office basically. And they're like, "Hey, we heard you launch a t-shirt," and there was, some females lifting their shirts to show their maps. "This is not how we do things here." And I was like, "Okay." And then I like left the dean's office and went to administration and like paid for school with the money. And that kind of started to kickstart everything, right? So I'm getting involved with printing. I get in this entrepreneurship program. I travel all over the world. I meet amazing people. We're in business plan, pitch competitions,
Right.
a ton of time overseas. It's just learning a ton and really kind of refining the idea of printing. I launched a backpack company with my now wife, then girlfriend. We launched a Kickstarter campaign, and I'm like, "Hey, this is it. I'm dropping out of school." Like,
Yeah.
Classic garage story. We were like making backpacks and printing t-shirts in our dorm room. And I decided, I'm like, "Hey, I'm going to drop out." She's like, "No, you're not. There's not a chance. You got to figure this out." So coming into that crazy time of what am I going to do after school? And I have college debt
Yeah.
bearing down on me. Like,
Yeah.
how do you stifle entrepreneurship in the US? A lot of the ways it's probably college debt or crippling college debt. How do you
Yep.
set yourself up for that? So I was lucky enough to kind of find my way through it. Recruited a business partner. He's the financier of the whole operation, and we buy some equipment. We launched Duluth screen printing in 2013, 14, and I spent the next couple of years selling t-shirts on campus, driving back and forth. So that by the time I graduated, we had a full-time job. So my wife and I moved back to Duluth. I moved her up there. She needed like $1,000 parka and $400 boots, things, stuff you don't have money for, but you figure out. It's like a pre-engagement ring basically at the time. And we launched the business, and there's probably no worse time to launch a business than January in Duluth, Minnesota, a t-shirt printing business. I was humbled. I was like, what have I done, right?
Did you at least sell long sleeves?
We tried to sell anything we could, right?
Maybe a few hoodies.
Yeah, so we stuck to our guns. We were living there, working there. I did my best just to like maintain the best customer service possible at the forefront of the business. And being the young guy in town, people were willing to throw you a bone.
Sure.
So we got a lot of benefits there, and you're obviously, trying to figure it out, trying to figure out pricing. So you're undercutting everybody. You don't even realize it. You're just trying to survive. And, that evolved to us recruiting other really great people. And I would say the history of printing and entrepreneurship and running a business for me has always been lucky staff that come in, they work hard, they're awesome, they're energetic, they're great people. And, they share a similar vision as to what you want to accomplish. And I've always been very lucky with that. And that's kind of what really built the business. So next 4 to 5 years, we grew it to 50, 60 employees. It was crazy. COVID hits.
Yeah.
The whole world kind of changes. And, we had to kind of pivot the business. We were predominantly resort-based. And at the time, being a resort-based business in Minnesota, it's tough to, they don't have the ability to sell direct to their end user.
Right.
So we were trying to find a way, hey, during COVID, how do we help? Wholesale is kind of hurting, retail's hurting. How do we get our products to the end user on behalf of these resorts? And that changed our entire operation. So we invested in, and DTF wasn't there yet. So we invested in a digital printing machine, a Kornit machine, and bought it in the second half of 21, launched it, and I had my first baby boy in 2020. And I just realized I was working 60 plus hour weeks, and
Yeah.
you run a business or you be an entrepreneur for so long, and you kind of wake up and you're like, what am I doing here?
Yeah.
Um,
It's having a kid will do that.
having
Yeah.
a kid. Yeah. So I was awakened in a lot of ways. And, I think a lot of having my first son, really kind of changed my career path. And it's kind of what's led me here. And in so many ways, I realized, one, at that time, I wasn't being a good manager and a good leader, to 50, 60 people who then they have families to take care of. So
Yeah.
kind of dawned on me, like, I'm not there for my family. I'm not doing a good of a job for, the team and growing it. So I knew, it was time to transition out. So set up a really good exit strategy with the management team, got out of the business, ended up selling our house in Duluth and kind of resetting, and we moved to the Twin Cities.
Okay.
And then I got recruited by Kornit, to come in and be a screen category manager, which is kind of a funny term that, they're an Israeli-based company, so there's kind of a language barrier there on
Sure,
that. And
sure.
we still laugh about it today, but got in, and my goal was to help decorators look at transitioning from screen, analog, as they would say, to digital in some capacity. Traveled on a plane, probably 100,000 miles the first year, every country possible. Wife gets pregnant with you're supposed to say we get pregnant, right? That's how it's the correct way.
And then your wife carries it. I think that's fair to say.
That's fair. We get pregnant the second one, and she's like, what are you doing? You're back to being a crazy entrepreneur. You're on the road a ton. And, I think I traveled to 120 print shops, all over the nation, all over the world in the 18 months that I was with Kornit. And we had
It's a lot of travel.
It's a ton of travel. I was living on a plane.
Yeah.
And I loved it. It was something that I wanted to do. I also felt like, not being a great leader for the team
Sure.
was kind of a byproduct of not learning more, right? So I was like, do I go get my master's? Like, what do I need to do to kind of like shock myself a little bit and get out of my comfort zone and learn?
Yeah.
And Kornit was really the kind of that first kickstart for me. Being an entrepreneur, your friends always say, hey, the corporate grind is crazy. And it's crazy in a completely different way than entrepreneurship. So ton of fun, did that. And there was a big push to, Kornit at the time, still is a real Israeli-owned and based company in Tel Aviv, but they have U.S. offices in Newark, New Jersey. And it was really hard to get decorators on the West Coast to come there to look at machines.
Sure.
So one of the projects I was working on was, hey, how do we set up a West Coast training center? How do we get something over there that we can do? And I fly out to LA and I go to all the t-shirt blank manufacturers. I walk into Next Level and I meet Mike Alexander, who's now the CEO at Jaanuu. We sit down, have a great conversation. They totally get it. They're like, yep, this makes a ton of sense. We see the synergies. You guys can bring customers in, set up a machine here. We'll use it for events. This is a ton of fun.
Yeah.
Sounds great. Let's do it. And that kind of kickstarted a relationship with Mike. And then, as things continued to kind of unravel, we ended up not being able to get it done. And then, 18 months later, number 2 has been born for a year at this point.
Yeah.
And then my wife gets pregnant again. So number 3 is on the way, still traveling like crazy.
Yeah.
And I'm doing this like, hey, what am I doing again? Right? Like on the plane, not home for my kids and family. I got to figure this out. So pump the brakes, take some time off, end up leaving Kornit, and I get a phone call from Mike in April, May. And our daughter, who's now, coming up on 2 years, she was born in May. So he calls me in April, about a month before she's born. He's like, hey, I just walked into Jaanuu. I'm now the CEO. I know we had some good conversations about entrepreneurship. I feel like I need an entrepreneur to come into this business and really kind of help kickstart things.
Yeah.
I'd love for you to run our sales team and take us into different sales channels, right?
Right.
Decoration background, his background. Jaanuu at the time, 99% of the business is all direct to consumer.
Sure.
So I fly out, I meet Mike, and we have a great conversation, and kind of the rest is history. And I feel like I found my dream job. So it's
That's
kind
great.
of fun. Yeah.
Great story.
So that's how I got into Jaanuu, and
Yeah.
I didn't really know anything about scrubs at the time. It's as a decorator, and you guys can probably relate to this, but it's hard. It's always been hard to like sample it out. Like how, where do you go for it, and what's the
Yeah.
quality level? If you're not a retailer, like a scrub retailer, it's hard to know, what products are, and what people are asking for, and what the quality of product is, right?
Right.
And that was like the big eye-opening thing for me, is jumping into Jaanuu and understanding it's the only female physician-founded
Yeah.
scrub brand on the market, which is really cool. And Dr. Neela is a pediatrician, and she came into Jaanuu in a really interesting way. She became a doctor and was draped in these really ill form-fitting scrubs.
Yeah.
And I think, her motivation was like, man, like I just did all this hard work to become a doctor, and now I'm wearing these scrubs, and
Hard work.
I look like, I look like hell, and
Yeah.
I don't feel great, and these don't fit well. And she's a fashionista, so it just kind of like hit. And she has a classic garage story of how do I bring a product to market that's different. So
Yeah.
launching the company, a little over 12 years ago, she really has always maintained and has helped the team maintain the eye of a physician when it comes to putting a product in the market. So,
Yeah.
one thing that Jaanuu is really proud about is we won't build something unless it's up to spec, because it's her, it's her peers that are wearing it, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
people that she works with every day. So we can't ever put a product into market that isn't top tier engineering, quality, fit, fabrication, you name it. It has to be there. Otherwise we won't make it.
And I would imagine having that background of her being a physician, having done the job, gives her such a vision for what is actually needed for the features, for how fabric should be made, how it should sit on the body, all those different things that are part of scrubs and anything that's going to be in that environment where you're in that medical setting. What an advantage to have.
It's so fun. Yeah. I think, like I said, to this day and forever, Jaanuu will always never cut a corner.
Yeah.
And you can see that when you turn our products inside out, you'll see the level of detail that we go through to minimize restriction, number one. So like as these HCPs are wearing the product 12, sometimes, 24 hours a day, the heavier the garment and the more ill-fitting it is, it's going to provide restriction. That restriction wears down on you and you're losing energy, right? You're not able to do a great job. Just you're not thinking of it until you try something that totally just omits it, right? And it's little things like that she has really kind of instilled in the design team in a unique way. And the other one that we always talk about is the valuables pocket. That's kind of become like a really cornerstone of our brand. I think her husband, who's also a physician, has lost his wedding ring like 5 or 6 times. So that, that like inspired her to design this little pocket inside of the pants pocket.
You don't have to lose your ring.
You don't have to, zip this, throw it in there. And that's become kind of a little love story for our brand and why people love us.
That's awesome.
I think it's so interesting. I think the story itself, but our brands align so well.
Yeah.
Really focusing on that purpose over product. And I think not cutting those corners and delivering a solution at the end of the day. And I think what you guys have been designing in the products themselves is, yes, you're getting great leadership from her, obviously her being a physician, but like really taking what you're hearing, I think, out in the field and adapting that into products that create the right function, fit, performance, that stand up all day long, right? These, whether it's a classroom setting and it's a student on the go, they're in a business environment and a health system. There's a lot of demands, I think, that come in how you design and how you actually craft real quality goods at the end of the day. And I think that modern feel and how that fashion gets implemented, I think, into scrubs now is becoming a bigger and bigger request. I think folks want to feel comfortable in these stress high environment settings where at the end of the day, like you said, you might not notice at first, but if you're not wearing something comfortable, like could you have had more energy? Could you have been more driven to produce a better result in your performance during that day. So I think that fashion makes function, and like how you really design things is super important. And I think that purpose over product at the end of the day will be the winning result. I think that really delivers quality goods.
Totally. Yeah, I don't think I could have said that better. And in so many ways, data and feedback is essential on how you're designing into product lines in the future, right? How do you
What's the marketplace?
yeah, how do you meet that?
Yeah.
But what continues to be consistent is HCPs want things that are comfortable.
Yeah.
Right. Period. They want things that are comfortable. Number two is fashionable, contemporary, and elegant. So how do you marry those two? And it's a really hard challenge. And we have a very talented product and design team that is doing a phenomenal job on looking at trends, understanding where the market's going, and not chasing competition. There's juggernauts in this industry.
Sure.
That are kind of running away with a lot of things because they have the marketing bandwidth to do so, where we kind of dial it back and say, who are we doing this for? Right. It's for the healthcare professionals, right? So
right.
At the end of the day, proceeding with that in mind sets you up for how do you take care of them from a white glove experience on the customer service side, and how do you consistently improve that? And I think one thing that Mike, our CEO, has done a really good job of is not drinking our own Kool-Aid, right? And once we do something really great, or we do something that we think is good, he doesn't dwell on it. He's like, hey, how do we make it better? How do we do this better? How do we think differently? So as Jaanuu continues to evolve, I think we feel really good on where the industry's at in comparison to where we're forecasting into and what the products we're building into.
Right.
And it's hard to meet those two, but yeah, I think that's the big thing about Jaanuu today is designing fashion-forward items that people love, that fit really great, and then backing it with customer service.
Yeah.
And owning that.
And I think that all circles back to where our organizations align from a mindset standpoint. We're in these conversations all day, both in the corporate marketplace and in higher education, where you have a lot of health systems, school of medicine, school of nursing that are all tied in to a scrub-centric environment. And you look at that white glove approach, and that's exactly what our brand advisors are doing every day. They're working with these schools, they're working with these organizations to understand what they're hearing from their marketplace and how can they help provide that solution to them. And the fabrics you all have developed, leading with breathability, functionality, flexibility, and weight, it is something that we hear constantly from campus. Is all that we have right now are outdated, ill-fitting garments, and it's just such a great solution to be able to bring you guys to the table in these conversations as that premium option.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
It feels a little bit like a mini revolution on college campuses from what we're pulse checking. So, we talk to a ton of admins at universities, and it's kind of a resounding call out, I would say, that the campuses are so used to run of the mill buffet.
It's always buffet shows up. I wear it.
Yep, and it's good to go, right?
Yeah.
But what's happening in the market and industry, especially with social media and just marketing in general and advertising, we as a brand, we're a D2C brand. Yeah. We're spending a ton of money on awareness and trying to obviously gain market share.
Yeah.
So what we're seeing is college campuses, or is in those conversations, admins will come back to us and say, resounding yes, our students want your product. It's out of budget, but our students want your project. And, can we sample a couple different options, or more affordable or a little more expensive, higher quality items? And it's crazy when you do that. And you guys probably have a really good story on this, but we'll sample them product and they always pick the best stuff.
Yeah.
Budget is just deleted from their mind. They're like, yep, nope, doesn't matter. We love it.
I would say the marketplace right now is looking for quality.
Yep.
And they're looking for something that's more modern, that offers different fits.
And I think
joggers.
That goes across like all product categories. People want nice stuff.
I think they're willing to invest in the brand. If it's something that they know is going to hold up tried and true day to day. So I think, yes, at the end of the day, I think you mentioned data and technology and helping that lead decision making and how you're designing some of these products. I know it's got to be hard to design some of them sometimes because of all of the rules and regulations with hospitals and colorways and decoration. And so how do you guys sort of navigate that as you are getting that feedback, but then have to apply some of that, knowing there are some of those restrictions or gates you have to get through to get something to be able to actually bring out to the marketplace?
Yeah, that's great. And this is kind of my 2 cents for all decorators.
Yeah.
Once you realize that scrubs are an annuity, it changes how you attack the market.
Yep.
That's
exactly
whether it's 3 months or 6 months or a year, HCPs are buying 3.5 to 6 sets a year.
Yeah.
So when you look at like how you build a scrub business and how we're designing our product and where we're positioned on our product cycle, a lot of it is core availability. So what do we keep in core? What do we keep in stock and colorways 365 days a year that HCPs, everybody, you guys can trust and come back to and say, I can always get these 6 to 7 colors. I can get these fits and cuts. So we build a lot of our business off of making sure core is always there, right? That white glove service of it's always in stock, it's always available. These are the core colors you need in an HCP setting. And then it's fun, right? So after that, it's like, okay, how do we have fun? How do we take the traditional stuff that 90% of the market's wearing today, and how do we design something into a dental clinic that an office admin or a doc wants to wear, that's a lot more elegant, a lot more unique, and lets them express who they are. And that's where like the fashion side of Jaanuu has always kind of maintained a sharp edge on the knife, of focus. So I guess to answer your question, it's, we always rely on our core business to make sure that we're doing the best, to make sure core is always improving. It's always available. The colors are sound. Of course, we'll add, trendy colors that might, like the last couple of weeks, I've heard a ton that people want grape. And I like, Mike's been in the industry for
if you
grape.
yeah.
And I'm like, grape. I was like, so I called Sophia, who's our VP of product. I'm like, hey, Sophia, do we have any, data history on purples? And she's like, well, we're launching an eggplant. I'm like, I'm a salesman. I know that that's not grape. Like, what do you get me? She's like, it's a fashion color, but if you have a ton of people asking for it, let me know. And, so it's fun conversations like that move the needle on the core base of business. But, our product team they've come from incredible high fashion brands.
Right.
And based both in fashion and technicality designing.
Yeah.
Like I said, they're having a ton of fun on how do we do something unique that's letting them express, or these HCPs express something differently in the market. So if you look at our product today, even like the polo I'm wearing, traditionally speaking, it's not a scrub top that someone would say that's a scrub top, but it is. And it's really fun. And it's more of a modern uniform, which is kind of one thing we cling to.
Well, and I think that shows that background that your designers have in fashion. It comes into how these fabrics are tailored, how the zippers are placed, how the necklines are tailored to the different cuts. It shows. And when we talk about fashionable scrubs on this podcast, that's really what we're talking about, is the look and feel and how it fits. So for our listeners out there, if you're in the market for scrubs and you have not checked out Jaanuu scrubs, you need to experience what this is all about. Yes. It is different by design, and that has a purpose in this industry.